wanted to use
Billy Shark.
Now, among other questions that come to mind, how many other jihadists out there are carrying Western passports? What missions might ISIS have for them? The danger of ISIS for the United States and other Western nations may still strike some people as a little remote. But for many Americans, of course, just about the last thing we want to think about is more conflict in Iraq and what that might involve. But we better get on top of this crisis by every means necessarily, because events are moving fast and the price is only going to go up from here. We have come to one of those moments when American action will be decisive and inaction will be consequential. There used to be a bipartisan tradition in American foreign policy, a basic willingness to unite in fundamental matters of security. If anything is left of that old spirit, we need to draw on it in a big way and right now. Sure, it is tempting to revisit and re-argue the old decisions that have already been made. Many on the left are going to say that the fatal mistake was made when we went into Iraq in the first place. Many Republicans would argue that the 2011 withdrawal from Iraq left some hard-won gains at risk. The pullout seemed to be driven by political calculations and not strategic ones. Still others take the view that no matter what comes next in Iraq, it's no concern of ours. Their attitude is, we gave it our best effort, but now we're done. And then there's the sense of regret and tragedy that still hangs over the failure to help Syrian rebels at a crucial point when it could have made all the difference. They could well have gained the upper hand against the Assad regime. Syria could have been spared a lot of violence and other trouble instead of becoming the ISIS stronghold that it is today. We heard from the White House that Assad must go. That was an opinion, not a policy. And so it all came to nothing. Just now, however, these and other questions, I'll suggest they need to wait for another day. We can talk about all the causes and the contributing factors all day long, and it will get us exactly nowhere. What matters in the here and now are outcomes that are still in our power to influence. We know what the jihadist objectives are in Iraq and Syria, so let's be clear and unequivocal about our own. Erbil, a strategically crucial city in the north of Iraq, must not be allowed to fall. The momentum of the fight must be reversed so that the cities overrun by ISIS can be taken back by Iraqi troops. In Syria, as well as Iraq, this terrorist army must be confronted with overwhelming force. In recent weeks, President Obama, his response has included limited airstrikes in hopes of finally slowing the ISIS offensive in the Kurdish north. He also sent 1,000 or so of our American military advisors and special operators. He provided humanitarian relief and aid to the Yazidis. And the least, well, the Yazidis that were able to escape and get into the mountains, the administration wishes, and for that matter, who doesn't, that this was just a humanitarian crisis. And when they talk about limited airstrikes, they place a great emphasis on the word limited. Yet, clearly, more airstrikes are necessary. Nothing less than a sustained air campaign to degrade and destroy ISIS forces is required. The Iraqi people are up against a terrorist blitzkrieg, and it went practically unhindered for many weeks. And even though these killers have seen glimpses of our superior power and technology, they need to see a lot more of it. And as for the many Iraqis who are trying to defend themselves and their country, they need to see more help from us. Air power is a major part of it, but it's also going to take more special operations, intelligence, and advisory support than we've offered so far. One more potent force for the good is the Peshmerga in the Kurdish region. They're a well-trained, disciplined militia. By every account, they have the will and the ability to fight back against the terrorists. What's missing are the heavy weapons they need to stop ISIS, counter its maneuverability, put it on the defensive. The United States and allies, if they are willing, should launch an immediate airlift and deliver those assets to the Kurdish forces. Peshmerga fighters, aided by American airstrikes in mid-August, have already thrown back ISIS in defense of cities that looked to be lost just a few weeks ago. The Peshmerga is a fierce and a ready force on the ground, and right now, they are in the best position to confront, overpower, and in time, defeat this enemy. In all of this, our allies, essential to the effort, and I might add, to the credit of the British and the French and the Germans, they have begun to act already. People in those countries, as in America, have been stirred to action in the last weeks by these chilling news reviews of the savagery of the Islamic State. The great powers in these nations, if they do nothing else, are in the business of preventing the worst from happening. And we know the worst when we see it. The atrocities of ISIS would command our attention even if we had no security interest, although we clearly do. And the list of countries with a big stake in defeating ISIS doesn't end with just Western powers, because it is so very extreme. Even by local standards, the Islamic State has clarified some very common interest in the region. ISIS has designs on Jordan, for example, and a serious threat to the stability of that country would not be a welcome development for other powers in the region. Even Iran is in this complicated position. For years, they sought to undermine our efforts in Iraq, and yet today they oppose ISIS. So we shouldn't assume that the people today terrorizing Iraq and Syria have powerful support across the region. They do not. And where they are operating now, they are, of course, universally feared and despised. Yet there are chronic problems and divisions within the Iraqi government itself. And these have hindered the country's ability to act when united action is needed. But the basic situation is this. Iraq is a democratic nation of 32 million people who are horrified by the danger that is around them. And with everything on the line, if we help them, Iraq can protect and defend themselves. In the weeks and the months to come, we need for these and surely other military measures in Iraq to become even more obvious and urgent. President Obama is going to hear warnings from his party. He's going to hear the word mission creep. And that's often a very valid concern. How could we not be mindful of that after what we've seen occur? And yet, in this case, it seems to me,